Hey friends, today I've got a real talk on the topic of motivation. I've covered this in so many different angles. It continues to fascinate me. I'm going to give you a new framework to think about motivation as well as a couple of analogies. So the big takeaway I'm going to tell you right now is that momentum carries motivation, and that without that action, right? Motivation is pretty powerless, but not at all useless, right? We all have a basic drive for that is motivation already within, right? I mean, it's at the biological level, a desire for survival. Okay, so the analogy. Excuse me. So the analogy, if I look like I woke up from a nap not too long ago, it's because I woke up from a nap not too long ago. Okay, so let's do analogies. The first one is I want you to think about a relay race where we have a handing over of the baton, and the first one to hand over the baton is a sprint runner, and the one to take the baton is the long distance runner. So I think you know what I'm getting at already, right? So motivation is short-lived, quick, and all out, and cannot be sustained, right? That excitement cannot be sustained. Excuse me. And that would be the motivation. Now, the action required to actually do something with motivation is the act of handing over the baton. Then we have momentum, which is the long distance runner who takes the baton. Now, keep in mind, the long distance runner is not bound by speed. He's only bound by distance. He could go fast, but he could go slow, or she or whatever. As long as they are consistently keeping pace. So there's your momentum. Okay, one more analogy. I want you to think about like a campfire. How we use kindling, which is the motivation to start the fire. But then once the fire gets going, and it's very easy to maintain, so regardless of how big the fire is, as long as it's an ongoing fire, there is our momentum. Now here's the beautiful thing about motivation. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Is that when the campfire fizzles out, whether we do it intentionally or real life happens, right? We don't have to mourn that fire or worry about restarting that fire, because we have the knowledge of how to use the kindling in order to start the fire. Okay, all right, but to make this all useful in real life, I'm going to start with two quotes, and these quotes I actually have to write down here in front of me, because I'm such a big proponent of using our real life, our real situation, our real personality, being aware, all of that in the foundational month that I take people through, in order to actually make whatever it is you want to happen stick. And one of those tools or ideas is the idea of push-pull, right? What works for you, right? To be pushed towards your goal, or to be pulled by your goal. So I'm going to give you a push-pull quote on motivation. The first one I think is from a book called Indestructible. Lack of motivation, of course, isn't the real problem here. Okay, the lack of motivation, it would be like a clinical concern, because we all have, at the very least, a biological drive for survival. So that's one of the reasons why I always say the motivation is already existent inside us. Therefore, don't go looking for it. Motivation is waiting on you. You're not waiting on it. And what that means is that when you are concerned about a lack of motivation or not being motivated, that's not really the case. What's happening is that there's an active repression of what's already there, which is motivation. I'm going to come back to that. Let me give you the two quotes first. All right, so I think the first one is from a book called Indestructible. All motivation is a desire to escape discomfort. There's a push, right? You want to avoid discomfort, and therefore you'll act in order to save yourself from discomfort. The other one is from, is a quote by Smiley. There is only one motivation, and this is a desire. No reasons or principle can contain it or stand against it. One more time. There is only one motivation, and this is desire. No reasons or principle can contain it or stand against it. There's the pull. Now you're being pulled by the goal or whatever, destination, right? Okay. Whatever you resonate with more, whether it's being pushed or being pulled, okay? Those are that's the category of the toolkits that we would deploy for you, okay? But again, what is the actual actionable takeaway here? Remember, momentum requires an action. Well, here's the first takeaway, is that a decision is an action, right? Now, going back to when I said lack of motivation isn't a thing. If you feel a lack of motivation, it means that there is an active repression of motivation. So think about that. Think about how ironic that is. A lot of times we link lack of motivation with laziness, right? Oh, it's just too much. We don't have the energy. We don't have the strength to act. Well, you're actually using a lot of energy to actively repress the motivation that is already there and already within you, and you don't have to go looking for it, right? So if we stop the repression, right, that is a low-hanging fruit. That's always one of my biggest tips, is that we start with the easiest, smallest, small does not mean easy necessarily, but easiest and smallest and least amount of energy, almost automatic type of action. So a lot of times that means simply putting a stop to something before we add something, or it means taking away what's already there before we input something, right? So usually the taking away or stopping takes less energy and less thinking and less planning than inputting or adding something new. Okay. All right. One last embellishment on this idea, on the analogy of a relay race. With that long distance portion, with that momentum portion, if you do the pre-work, right? If we work on the mindset first to clear the road for this long distance run, to think ahead of the obstacles that we can expect, that momentum is going to carry or last a lot longer with less pain. It'll be easier, right? So let's make our long distance run, as easy as possible. That's a huge tenet of mine, is to make things as easy as possible, because life is hard enough. Okay, so all right, I think that's about it for my spontaneous jibber jabber. All right, I will do a separate post on some of the takeaways here on that about momentum being, the carrier of motivation, and the motivation is I don't want you to think motivation is useless or powerless. It actually is a very useful thing to be very clear on our motivation, because that's one of our big, like, drive, you know, levers of our drive, linking to our purpose. But I really do want you to understand that motivation, as useful as it could be, is powerless, completely powerless, without some sort of action to knock over that first domino. Okay, I don't know how many analogies did I throw at you here today. Talk to you later. Bye.